Welcome. We're glad you're here. Our show is all about discussing the top lessons learned from the week cyber news and, of course, the week cyber breaches. And if you like us, kindly hit the subscribe button and definitely hit the like button as well. We do have a threat breach email, which talks about the latest news. You can get all the links delivered directly to your inbox every single week. You can also subscribe to that on our website. And I'm Hef, and you can think of me as your Happy Days host. I'm like the combined attitude of Ralph and Potsy mixed together here. Forrest is not with us this week. He is in rough shape. He's a little sick. I always remind myself of the famous quote from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Forrest's sick. My best friend's sister's boyfriend, brother's girlfriend, heard from this guy who knows this kid who's going with this girl who saw Forrest pass out at 31 Flavors last night. I guess it's pretty serious. So we wish her the best of luck on recovery. And we are SecurityMetrics. We're founded on the belief that small businesses, they should have access to affordable, high quality, and simple to use data security and compliance tools. So check us out. Our top stories this week: Western Digital hard drive vulnerabilities. We're also going to look at LinkedIn. It's a social media goldmine. Their second breach in the year of 2021. And Microsoft, they only release press releases, bad news on Fridays. And we're always going to look at the top cyber hygiene stories that are out there this week. That's all next here on the SecurityMetrics News Podcast. All right, so we're going to start off the show this week with the most prominent data breaches that are in the news. And there's always a lot, but trying to pick out the best ones that you can learn from, lessons learned from those breaches. So the one that really should catch your eye, and I don't know about you, but I'd be really upset if I came home and my Western Digital hard drive was not working. I would be so upset and bummed out. And that's what happened to thousands of people out there. So the story goes, Western Digital's MyBook Live. This guy actually posted a little information about it. Take a look here. I have a Western Digital MyBook Live connected to my home LAN. It worked for years, worked great. I've had no problems with it. And all of a sudden today, all the data is gone. All the directories seem empty. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. Yeah, his 2 terabyte volume was almost full. And now it shows at full capacity. Kind of weird, right? So the strange thing he says, I try to log in, I'm not able to access it. And the story goes that Western Digital is finding hackers. They're able to compromise the hard drive, and they're doing it through a exploitation of a remote command execution vulnerability. What's fascinating about this CVE, this vulnerability, it's been public and it's been unpatched since 2019. Imagine how upset you would be if you came home and your hard drive was completely erased. So this is pretty sad news here right now. A lot of people are trying to do factory resets. Actually, they're finding the compromise is causing factory resets. It's absolutely horrific to find all your data on your drive erased. But a lot of these devices are all at the end of life. And when you reach a device that's no longer being supported by the manufacturer, that's one key lesson learned to be taken away from this is you have to be aware of when your devices are no longer going to be supported. And I think if Forrest was here right now, he would say, always have a backup strategy. So, you have your main drive and then you have a second drive. And then ideally you're having some of that data stored in a secure cloud format. So bad news for Western Digital fans that use the MyBook Live hard drives. All right, another story that's going on right now, speaking of hard drives, ADATA hard drive company, they make a lot of SSD drives. In fact, I just bought one the other day before the whole Ragnar Locker ransomware hit their company. But they had a bunch of information stolen, financial documents, non-disclosure agreements, all that stuff was stolen. Their systems were taken offline. This happened in late May. And we're just now finding out about it. But their system's being taken offline. They did not pay any ransomware, and ADATA was able to actually restore from their backups, which is a pretty cool thing. What's interesting, though, about this story is the company that Ragnar used to store all of this leaked data. We're talking 700 gigabytes of leaked data. All of that stuff was stored on Mega Storage Service. And Mega has a policy in place that if you are a ransomware gang and you're storing any illegal data, stolen data on our service, we're going to take you down. We're going to shut you off. And that's what happened in this case. So interesting stuff what's going on there at ADATA. Another story, another breach that hit the news was Mercedes-Benz. My gosh, folks, I think now in the last 2 or 3 episodes, we've talked about all of these car manufacturers being breached. And last time we talked about Volkswagen. This week, it's Mercedes-Benz. And it's not just the car manufacturers being targeted. Geico and the car insurance companies are being hit. A lot of these breaches are being attributed to data scraping type breaches. But in this case with Mercedes-Benz, it was a third-party service, a third-party vendor. And they informed Mercedes and they said, hey, some information was inadvertently made accessible on our cloud storage platform. A third-party security researcher actually found this. So as of this moment in time, when you read the press release from Mercedes, it doesn't say that any data was stolen. Originally in the news, it was about 1.6 million records. And then it's been shrunk down to about 1,000 people right now. But this is important. If you were at Mercedes in the past year and you were looking at buying a car and you filled out a whole bunch of information, your driver's license number, you gave them your social, you gave them your credit card information, that stuff was caught up in this Mercedes-Benz leak. So just be aware of it. And as of right now, as far as we know, no threat actors have managed to get access to any of this data. So that's good news on that piece. The other breach that caught my eye, and I got to tell you, these cruise lines, they're starting back up again. It's like, a lot of their employees may have been working from home, their home office staff, their headquarters staff, and then they're coming back into the office. Well, they actually had an unauthorized third-party breach that accessed a limited number of email accounts. I always like when press releases say that. It's just a small amount, just a smidgen of email accounts. But yeah, they sent out a breach notification letter. Apparently, this happened back in March, and it's just now that we're finding out about this. But a company like Carnival, especially a lot of these travel companies, they collect so much data. Data on the guest experience, travel bookings, future bookings, all that data that's collected when you're actually on the cruise ship, where your travel paths are, all those trackers and their apps, all that kind of stuff. It was part of this data breach. So something to think about, when you're on these cruise ships, how much data are you giving them access to? What permissions are you giving them access to is a key issue here. Apparently in this breach, names, addresses, phone numbers, passport numbers, dates of births, health information even. You have to give that information over when you're getting on a Carnival cruise line, any cruise line. So all that stuff, potential for misuse by threat actors. So fascinating. This is the point of the presentation where we talk about gaslighting. I wish Forrest was here to hear this because he loves talking about these gaslighting things. I mean, this is the stuff that should get you upset. It should get you fired up. Privacy stuff, your data being leaked out there, all that kind of stuff. This is gaslighting. I like to think of this as our biannual LinkedIn data breach notification. Can you believe it, folks? LinkedIn has now been breached twice in 1 year, 2021. This time, we're talking about 700 million users' data was leaked. Now, this also happened back in April. So if this sounds like deja vu, you go back and watch a few of our old episodes where we talked about the previous LinkedIn breach. Again, it's being attributed to data scraping, the one back in April. Right now, this newest one, the 700 million users' data that was leaked, is being sold on the underground. Raid Forums, I believe, is the dark website that's selling the information. What we don't know is if these records that are being sold are a accumulation of the data from the previous breach back in April. We still don't know that information. So we also don't know what public profiles, what some of the data that was included in there. If it's, I've read one report that said salaries were included in there, job titles. If you are a threat actor, and you need social media information to find a doorway or a window into somebody's life, this is the type of breach that you would be after. You buy that data, and then the bad guy can then take and do social media, reconnaissance type work into your environment. So, hey, I'm a recruiter from LinkedIn and I saw your profile online and I love your title. It fits perfectly for a job opening I have. And the next thing you know is, you don't trust this person, or maybe you do. You click on their link that they send you in an email. And the next thing you know is the bad guy has then pivoted from your personal life into your work life. And that's exactly what the threat actors like to do. My advice to all of you, if you have a LinkedIn profile, you got to get it under secure. You got to change the password, obviously. The other thing that's really cool about LinkedIn and also companies like Facebook is they offer their own version of two-factor authentication. It's something we talk about a lot on this show, and it's something you need to enable on any app that offers multi-factor, two-factor authentication. You jump all over that. So good stuff. Okay, guys, this is, man, I get upset when companies do this, and you should too. They release all their bad news on Fridays. Like right when people are going home for the weekend, you're getting ready to walk out the door, and all of a sudden you get this press release from Microsoft. And it wasn't just one thing that Microsoft released this past Friday. It was a bunch of different things. And we'll talk about the first one with Nobelium. These guys, Nobelium, these are the ones that were attributed to the SolarWinds breach. So they're very active. This Nobelium hacking group, these guys, they love to send out malicious emails. So again, training and awareness is one thing that helps create that awareness with your employees to not click on malicious emails from, especially emails from senders you don't even know. But what Nobelium is doing, and this is new, folks, what Nobelium is doing right now is they are using a technique called password spraying and brute force attacks. And what they're able to do then is anyone that clicks on their links, they're basically trying to use these password spraying techniques, massive quantities of just pray and spray, as we call it. Just try different passwords all at one time and try to get into your environment. With the Microsoft recent announcement and this press release on Friday is they said that one of their customer support agents was involved and wrapped up in this. They believe that some information, the customer support agent was clicking on the malicious link, allowed access to the threat actor into the environment. But wait, Billy Mays here for OxyClean. Wait, there's more. Hold on a minute. I'm going to tell you more in just a second. But most of the targets by Nobelium are in the IT world, IT companies, and government sector. That's who they're going after here. But this stuff, this credential stuffing, these password spraying things, they're all preventable. And, you talk about cyber hygiene, you got to enable multi-factor authentication in your environment. You also have to ensure that your employees are not using the same passwords and logins at home and at work. And restricting access helps too from any sort of specific network. So you have that network segmentation in your environment. So your HR server is separate from your accounting server, and it's separate from your operations department. You have all that segmentation, making it more difficult for the threat actor to get into your environment. But wait, remember I said there's more. Billy Mays here for OxyClean, right? Again, I can't believe Microsoft putting out these press releases. They also admitted, this is unbelievable, they also admitted to signing a malicious driver. So they're still investigating the incident. We don't have a lot of details, but there's some legitimate weaknesses in Microsoft's signing process for drivers. And when a threat actor can get access to something as what you think would be secure, as the process that Microsoft uses to digitally sign their drivers, it's scary. When Microsoft doesn't have their stuff together, then you wonder about everybody else, right? And this is actually all being attributed to drivers for video games, for their gaming stuff. So something to be aware of. There is some attribution in this digital signing issue with the drivers. It's being attributed back to China. But, with this process, the threat actor, will submit a driver for certification. And in this case, Microsoft said, yeah, this looks legit, and we're just going to allow it to go through. Bad stuff, folks. Bad stuff. Yeah. So Microsoft, the lesson learned here, Microsoft doesn't work on Fridays. They just make appearances. That's it, folks. All right. They don't work Fridays. They just make appearances. All right, we got to talk about something else here too. And gosh, I've been harping on this for a while. The cyber insurance stuff. But gosh, is it helping the industry? Is it helping or is it hurting? And a research paper came out from this company called Royal United Services Institute, RUSI. All right, RUSI. They said that, in their research, they don't think cyber insurance actually helps. And it actually makes the ransomware crisis worse. All right, I mean, this gets you fired up here when you hear stories like this. Paying the ransom actually motivates cyber criminals to do more damage. And now we talk about how insurance companies, basically the threat actors are double dipping the insurance companies. They're going after the company itself. The company pays the ransom, and then the threat actors are now targeting also the insurance companies. And they know they're going to pay. So how do you stop it? How do you, what's the lesson learned here? And if you've ever interacted with our company, SecurityMetrics, we'll always tell you one thing, that having cyber insurance does not fix your cyber problems. It's part of that defense in depth strategy, and you really still need to have that. You need to have, a partner or somebody in your world that can do the audits, do the pen testing, get the inventory of all the assets in your environment and start to harden those assets. So you got to have the security controls. It helps having cyber insurance, but if you're relying solely on that as your protection, that's where the bad stuff comes into play. So something to be aware of, folks. We'll include the link to this story and this report in our show notes. So we also want to talk about some of the top stories. Man, the top stories. This is, I don't know if you can put up this graphic, Director, but this is the glorious Cyber Hygiene Edition show. The rest of the stories are all about cyber hygiene. And this week, the news was flooded with cyber hygiene stories. And I like these kind of stories because they take big topics in the news and they squish them down into a couple bullet points. And there's good lessons learned from these bullet points. So the CISA, which is the Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, they put out a bad practices website. So in other words, like if you have bad behavior in your environment, like you should be doing this, you should be doing that. Why haven't you done this? Well, they're now cataloging that stuff on a website, which is really helpful. If you want to see a list of short things, bullet points of behaviors and activities and actions that you can take in your environment to protect yourself, this is the website to go to. I'm glad they're doing this. We'll include the link to it. They have right now 2 bad practices up on their site. The use of unsupported or end-of-life software, which is really relevant right now when you talk about the SolarWinds breach, the Accellion breach. Not patching is another issue. But number 2 on their list is using known, fixed, default passwords or credentials. So if you're not changing passwords often, or if you're using the same passwords at work and at home, that could leave you open to bad guys getting into your environment. So good site. I hope they add more stuff to it. I'm sure they will. Another story that came up in the news, man, when you hear stories like this, ransomware, the title of the story was ransomware is not out of control. Ransomware is not out of control. Security teams are. So they're pushing the blame back onto the cybersecurity folks. And I agree with some of the bullet points in here, but the article really drives home that common security practices can thwart most ransomware campaigns. So when you look at what are the takeaways from this article, the headlines in the news, it makes it seem like ransomware is out of control and the number of attacks are on the rise. But the reality is, a lot of the news is security teams are laxed in taking adequate steps to secure your environment. A lot of times you have in your business, especially if you're a small business, you probably have an IT person, and his concern often is availability, keeping the systems online. There's this thing called the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And when you look at IT side of the house, they typically are focused on availability. Let's keep the stuff up and running. Let's keep that uptime going. When you then cross into the mind of a cyber person like myself, we focus a lot on confidentiality and integrity, and that's our focus. So availability is important. but really confidential and keeping the data secure and keeping the integrity of the data is more important in the world that I am in. So the vast majority of companies, as the article says, are basically victims of their own making, and I couldn't agree with them more. When most companies, they find themselves in this pay or perish position, and the rampant just cybersecurity malpractices is all over the place. And the challenge, of course, is helping your IT staff step out of that IT mindset of availability, and step into that cybersecurity hat, put on that hat and start to think in that way. But there's a common set of themes in the article. And we talk about, from a malpractice standpoint, how could a cyber person help your environment? And the article focuses on 3 really critical bullet points. The 3 bullet points are, number 1, no patch management strategy. Okay. If your strategy is driven a lot more by concerns over network unavailability and less on actual data security, then you're going to have some problems. The second thing the article talks about is not understanding what normal traffic behavior looks like. It's an area that we focus a lot on in SecurityMetrics with our clients. I want to know what a normal baseline of traffic looks like in your environment. So before I can start stepping in and having threat hunters like Forrest come in and look for the bad guys, I got to know what normal looks like. I got to have some basic baseline of what's happening out there. Even things like a network architecture map, having it updated helps a guy like me to come in and look at that environment and finding out what normal looks like or should look like. The third thing, the article, I'll get my numbers right here, folks. The third thing that you want to be looking at here in this article, it talks about relying too much on backups. And I see that often in conversations with clients where they'll say, well, we got a backup. We're okay. We're good to go. And then the question is, well, when's the last time you looked at the backup? Were the backups segmented from the network? When's the last time you did a restore point? Like all those fundamental questions about backups need to be in place and have answers to. So good article. We'll include the link in the notes and you can read up on it as well. So again, our show, it's all about cyber hygiene, the last part of the show here. The Hill is another news organization that put out an article about SolarWinds. And they said that the cyber agency said that SolarWinds, the hack for SolarWinds, could have actually been deterred by simple security measures. And again, you can't make this stuff up. How simple of a security measures should they have had in place? Well, things like basic cybersecurity governance. So your policies, your procedures, playbooks. What do you do if this happens in your environment? Well, in the SolarWinds case, they're saying that was not there. They could probably have had a better shot at detecting the threat actors in their environment had they had some basic cybersecurity governance in place. So that's one piece of the article. And then the Hill also talked about, well, CISA said, firewall blocking all outgoing connections to the internet would have neutralized the malware. It's sometimes not as easy as that. They put out this one-line sentence and it probably sells newspapers, but it's always not as easy as that. It's really having this holistic approach to your connections and the traffic that you have in your environment. Having the right configuration in place is where it starts. Obviously blocking all connections may not be the right pathway to take for every business. It's about what's best for the business, not always what's best in the mind of cyber. And that's sometimes a challenge because your cybersecurity people, they sometimes get perceived as the police department, not always fair. We got to block everything. And that's not always the best approach. You got to do what's best for the business. And the article talks a little bit about that. How could SolarWinds been prevented? And for the most part, they give out a couple good examples of simple security measures. So good stuff. As we kind of wrap up the show today, I got to talk about this because the water utilities out there, they have been getting hit left and right. Take a look at the graphics for a moment up on the screen, some of these stats. So what happened was the Water Information Sharing and Analysis Center, which is known as the Water ISAC. So in the world of cyber, we have a bunch of ISACs for different sectors, different industries. So the Water ISAC folks put out a survey. They interviewed about 606 water and wastewater utilities. That's about 52,000 community water systems in the United States and about 16,000 wastewater systems. And I always wondered this, how safe is my drinking water, especially with the recent news of these recent breaches of water utility companies. And fascinating, a number was thrown out. 60% of water utilities say they have not fully identified all of the assets in their environment. That is like a critical first step. You got to know what's in your environment. You got to know all of the assets you have going on, hardware, software, apps, mobile, what's in the cloud. You got to have at least some sort of inventory, because before you can move to that step, then you can't secure things if you don't know what's in your environment. And in these wastewater and water utility companies, they're saying they don't even know. They don't even know what's out there. They don't know what apps are on people's phones. They don't know what hardware is out in the environment. But 21% said they do, and they are working to do that. They're working to get that type of list together. So that's important. But another number that came out of this survey was 70%. And they said that they have not identified all operational technology assets, which is an important part of this step of knowing what's in your environment. You can't secure your IT assets and your OT assets if you don't know what's there or not. So that's the first step in improving your environment. For most organizations, and especially guys like myself, I cannot protect you if I cannot see it. So that's a key takeaway here. And this is, I think, what we do very well at SecurityMetrics, by the way. I think we do a very good job of scanning people's environments and trying to find all of those assets, all that hidden stuff, the shadow IT stuff that's out there that you don't even know about. So getting that baseline report of assets in your environment is critical, because then you could start working towards the vulnerabilities. The respondents in that survey, there was one important paragraph, and when you read the report, if you get a chance to read it, it's a pretty short report. We'll include the link. The top challenges for securing drinking water and wastewater systems was minimizing control system exposure. So minimizing what's the threat actor can see when they try to scan your network. Also knowing the risks, assessing those risks, and then trying to figure out what the vulnerabilities are for both your hardware and your software and so on. So I also thought it was neat. The article said that 64% of the respondents said they don't have a CISO. They have nobody running the ship for cybersecurity in their environment. So it doesn't leave you with much faith and hope that your drinking water is not going to be destroyed by threat actors, right? All right, we got to talk about one last thing here, and this is, I wish Forrest was here to talk about this. This is his baby right here. He loves talking about fake reviews. And, I think the last episode we talked about dangerous extensions. So you go on Google and you decide, I'm going to install this extension in my browser, and you don't know if it's safe or secure or not. So you go, and if you read the reviews, you can kind of read some of the reviews and pick out and say, hey, this person doesn't look like a real person. This app, Teresa Duncan here, this app is great. I've only had a couple of issues with it, right? Well, that's the kind of stuff you see on the screen right now. You see these fake reviews, and you've got to be on the lookout for that. But we said that Google could do more, and they are. This is so awesome, guys. Google's now going to require, will require two-factor authentication and they're also going to require a physical address. If you want to be a developer for Android and you want to do that, you're going to have to provide those things. What's challenging, though, is on the dark web. And here is a great example, a great screenshot of a dark web marketplace that sells Google Play developer accounts. They go for about $89 an account. So if somebody wants to make a malicious app, they could basically go on the dark web, pay this fee, and they can then start developing for Google. So the whole plan with Google is now two-factor authentication, requiring a physical address. It might help curb down some of this stuff. We'll see the debates out there whether that'll work or not. I doubt it. But, threat actors, they're also not just developing apps, malicious apps through the Google Play Store, but they're also breaking into genuine accounts. They're actually breaking into genuine accounts and inserting malicious code into those legitimate apps. So that's a huge challenge. But I'm sure if Forrest was here, he'd be saying, this grinds my gears. But I'm glad we're seeing some progress on this piece. So that's our show, folks. We hope you enjoyed it. The top lessons learned. There's a lot going on out there. Kindly hit the like button, subscribe. I hope you liked the presentation. Hope you get some value from what we do here. And always leave a comment. We love talking about some of these stories. If something catches your eye in the news, or that just grinds your gears, please let us know in the comments. We love that kind of stuff. We are SecurityMetrics. We're founded on this belief that we can try to help small businesses, and we could try to do high quality, affordable, simple to use data and data security and compliance tools. So that's us. And thanks, folks, for joining us. Have a great week.